Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, The Intersection. In this video, I will show you how to pass form inputs into, into the same page in this case, but you can also do it in another page too. You can pass also form inputs to another page, if you will. So I've created a form, an HTML form, and each form has a unique ID. For the text name or full name, the ID is full name. For the email, the ID is an email. For the how many years the customers joined the club is called ID years. And the submit also has an ID, even though we're not going to use the submit button. But also on the bottom, you can see I created a paragraph in a div tag. Within that paragraph, I have spans, and with these spans, I have a unique ID. So in that span where you see a full name, I will display the full name. And on the ID of the span customer's email, I'll display the customer's email. And for the ID total charge, I'll display the total charges. So I'm going to take the values from these three text boxes and then place them right in my paragraph where I have these unique IDs. So I did this by creating a function in an external file of JavaScript, and then I use the AddEventListener, and I use the click event, and the name of the form, the process form, as you see it here. And you can see in the parameter I have the event. Event is kind of like a trick we use so we stop the browser from submitting the form before we even put any data on the fields themselves. So then I use that event parameter, event dot prevent default, and so the browser will not do its thing, will not submit until I click on the event and the button. So I'm using the click event. And then I created the local variables for the fees per month, $30. Cost is we're setting up to 0 because we're going to calculate the cost. 12 months per the 12 months in the year, and then we multiply that, and then we multiply it by the fees per month. And I have also referenced the three input boxes, and then I extracted the values and placed them in the paragraph that I have unique span IDs. So let's open Visual Studio Code and start working on it. But before we do this, please subscribe to my channel to get all of the updates as I make them. For the purpose of our tutorial today, I have created an HTML form with three inputs and one submit, and each one of them I have an ID, so I can reference those in my JavaScript using this ID. And I have created a CSS file. The CSS file is to make it visible so we can see it on this video clearly. So when I view this on the browser, it should look like this. I made each field, each input is required. So if you don't put anything in there and you click on the sign up, then you get this message. That's using the property required on HTML5. Each one of them set to be required. I've also created a folder for the script, and it is, for now, it's empty. So that's what we're going to be working on. That's what we're going to be working on for this video. So if I open it up side by side, you can see that I will reference each one of those inputs into my script file. So let's see how we start that. So first, let's create a function. I called my function process form. So now I need to reference my inputs. When I reference my inputs, I meant to kind of like declare them. So I have three inputs, one with the ID full name, and one with the ID email, and one with the ID years. So here's the years, here's the ID email, and here's the ID full name. So let's reference those. I created a local variable in the function, customer name, customer's email, and number of years. That's how many years they want to join our club. And then once I did that, I assigned them to the text box by using getElementById. by ID. So document getElementId ID by ID years, and that's the years input box, and document getElementByEmail, by email, and that's the email text box, and then the full name text box. And I use the IDs. IDs are unique, so can be only used one time on a file. Now, if I do this, the browser try to do the submitting as soon as I open the browser. So what we do, we just come here and pass a reference, any reference, let's say called event. That's what basically most developers do. And then we come right here and use the parameter event and prevent default. So prevent default submitting by the browsers. And then once I have done that, now I can display these values. I can display these values back into my HTML page. So to do this, to display them back, we use the, again, document element by ID, but now in this case, the ID is full name. This ID that I see in my paragraph here, full name, and then the email, the customer's email. So that's this ID customer email. I neglected the total charge because I'm going to do calculations. I'll show you how to do this in a second. Plus it's a number, so it's a number value. So let's see if this will work now. And before we see it work, we need to call the function by using the AddEventListener. So let's do that. So we call the method AddEventListener, and the method is using the click event, and then the process form is this form. So now we can check it and see if we can at least see the full name and see the customer's email. Let's put anything here so we can go. And here's the name, and here's the email. Let's change the color so we can see them a little bit better. So I made them, they should be red when I submit them. You can see here's the name already showed, and now here's the email. So now we know that we are submitting. So we can do our calculations, and I think I made it what? If you join, you can get this 10% discount. You can do that with an if statement, but let's just display, for the purpose not to make this video very long, let's just display the values, the dollar amount. The calculation is not as important here in our lesson. So let's go back here and let's create some variables that we need to use. So I created two variables, one for the fees, $30 a month, and the total cost, that's the calculated field. So the total cost will be 12. There's 12 months in 1 year, times the number of years, times fees per month. So 12 times 3, for example, if it's 3 years, 36 plus the $30 fees. And I created a little, or concatenated a little space. So that's just like so we can see it on the page clearly. So let's see what happens. And that, and then my email, and then 3 years, and then click submit. And here's $1,080 for 3 years. Now if we want to see this better, and then let's just add that class. I think the class should be right here. Class text. Let's change the color to red. And let's view it one more time. Let's refresh. And then 3. And then here it is, $1,080. Let's recap. Okay, so the first thing we did is we created an HTML form. This HTML form has 3 input text boxes and 1 submit. And each input has a unique ID. And then we have created a little paragraph using the div tags, the values that we in the form we capture and just place it right here for the full name, and right here for the total charge, and right here for the email. And to do this, we created this little JavaScript function. This JavaScript function named process underscore form, and then we're passing the parameter event. It can be E, it can be S, but most people use event. So this will prevent the browser from submitting the form by default. If you don't do this, you will not see any outcome. It's just like submitted as soon as you open your browser. And then we referenced the 3 input boxes. We don't need to reference the submit button because we're using AddEventListener. And then once we reference them, now we can display them on these IDs that we created in these paragraphs, in the main paragraph in the bottom of the form. So one is we give an ID span full name, the ID of the second one, customer email, and the last one is total charge. These are again these here: full name, customer email, and total charge. And then we call the function. The function call can be on the top, and we use the add event listener and click event. There are many events, and the function process form. There are many ways to do this little program, but this is the easiest way and quick way. Hopefully this will help you with your lab for this week. Thank you, and thank you for watching. Bye bye now.